At a construction site in Los Angeles. Gerald Kenneth looked a little embarrassed. He was wearing a vest, revealing his skin that was a little tanned, and his strong muscles. He was carrying around 5 bags of cement on his shoulder. It was his mission this morning. He could get paid $64 if he moved the whole truckload of cement from the construction site's gate to the designated spot. Beside him was a hot short-haired woman. She was gesticulating with her hands and explaining something to him. Patiently, Mr. Kenneth, please believe me. I am not a liar. You are indeed the ace of our mysterious army, Night Watch. You are our strongest weapon. 3 years ago, you disappeared on a special mission. Now it seems that you were badly injured on that mission and that you have lost your memory, so you remember nothing. Gerald looked relaxed as he carried the cement, which was about 440 pounds. He stopped and glanced at the woman. Don't keep me from my work, okay? The woman was right. Gerald only had 3 years of memory. He could not remember anything before that. The mysterious woman was stunned. Looking at Gerald, who was carrying cement, she felt that her nose was a little sour. Gerald used to be famous in the world and was known as the strongest combat force of Night Watch. Someone called him Slaughterer, and now, he was a worker at some construction site. Mr. Kenneth, as long as you come back with me, we will find a way to help you remember everything. And you have to work. Here, you will have countless wealth. Gerald didn't bother talking to her. He got back to work. Don't. The beautiful woman pursed her lips and gritted her teeth. Mr. Kenneth, think about it again. I will come here again. Tomorrow. Ignoring the beautiful woman, Gerald moved the cement to the designated place and threw it on the ground. Countless dust splashed and fell on his body, making him look even dirtier. Yet he was long used to it. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and planned to continue walking toward the door. Meanwhile, a car stopped not far away. A middle-aged woman in gorgeous clothes got out of the car and walked towards him. She wore a ads by Pub Future mask and walked carefully with every step as if she was afraid of dirtying her black shoes. Mom. Seeing her, Gerald was somehow nervous. It was his mother-in-law, Mary Bennett. I'm not your mom. Mary looked at the dirty Gerald with disgust and then took out a document from her bag. This is your divorce agreement with Irene. Sign it now. Gerald's expression changed slightly. Why? When he lost his memory, he was saved by Shelton Everett, Irene Everett's father, Mary's husband. Under Shelton's direction, he married Irene. Yet 3 months after their marriage, Shelton passed away. For the past 3 years, Mary and Irene looked down upon Gerald all the time. They had no jobs and relied on Gerald to work and earn money at the construction site, yet they still had a lot of dissatisfaction with him and felt that he was a loser. Why? No reason. You can't offer us the life we want. Tell me, what else do you have besides brute force? Mary rolled her eyes at Gerald and said, Irene's new boyfriend is rich. See my bag. It's worth $5,000. It's from my new son-in-law. And he is going to send a BMW to Irene today. What about you? How much money do you get from being dirty every day? We can't even buy a more expensive bag. Anger rose in Gerald's heart. Over the past 3 years, he had worked hard and given every penny he earned to Mary and Irene, but they still despised him. In 3 years of marriage, he had not even touched Irene's finger once. Cut the crap and sign it. Mary sneered. After that, we are done with you. I have packed your things and sent them to the security booth at the gate of the construction site. You can get them yourself. I have given you all my money. I don't have any money on me now. And you are kicking me out now. Gerald pulled a long face. That house is ours. You are not allowed to live there after the divorce, Mary said with disgust. Gerald gritted his teeth and said, but I put a down payment on the house with the money I earned. Mary smiled contemptuously. Irene's and my names are on the deed. It has nothing to do with you. Just sign the papers. My shoes will get dirty if I stay here any longer. Phew. Gerald tried hard to suppress his anger. For his promise to Sheldon, his benefactor, he had worked hard for 3 years, trying to win Irene and Mary's favor and maintain the marriage. Now, there was no need. He took the agreement, signed it, and stamped it. At least you are sensible. Mary looked at Gerald contemptuously. Then she said, Irene is so unlucky to be stuck with you for the past 3 years. Fortunately, it is over. She can continue to pursue her happiness. By that, you mean finding herself a rich man. Gerald sneered silently. All right then. From now on, you have nothing to do with us. Don't pester either Irene or me. You disgust me. Before leaving, Mary couldn't help but mock Gerald. Looking at Mary, who was leaving, Gerald was frustrated. He thought, the world is made of fucking money. Thinking of the beautiful woman just now, Gerald gritted his teeth and quickly ran towards the construction site's gate. The beautiful woman was still standing on the side of the road near the gate. She was talking to someone on the phone. Okay, boss, I'm taking a taxi. I'll be there soon. Seeing Gerald coming over, she hung up the phone and said to Gerald, Mr. Kenneth. Gerald exhaled and said, You didn't lie to me. No, the beautiful woman said happily. Are you willing to go back with me? No. If you didn't lie to me, prove it. You said if I went back, I'd have untold riches. Then prove it. For example, you may transfer tens of thousands of dollars to my bank account. Gerald looked at the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman frowned. Then she thought of something and said, I have an ongoing mission, and I have to carry it right. Now, how about this? There is a diamond card of new bank in your personal belongings, and the password is your birthday. Your money has always been on this card and has not been touched. You can check it at the bank. Gerald's expression changed. He did have such a card, but it was different from a normal bank card. He didn't even know it was a bank card. It had always been there, and he had never touched it. He glanced at the beautiful woman and then turned and ran to the security booth. Gerald, a woman just sent you a package. She said it was yours. The security guard saw Gerald and said with a smile. The man called it a package, but it was just a big garbage bag. Mary drove Gerald away, and she didn't even want to let him have a suitcase. Gerald smiled bitterly and then rummaged through the garbage bag. There were only a few clothes in the bag. He rummaged for a while and found a faded blue card with many diamonds painted on it. Sir, I'll leave it here for a while. I'll go out and be back in a moment. Gerald smiled at the man. Sure, but don't delay your work. You still have to carry a big truck of cement. You'll get scolded again if you don't finish it in time, the security guard warned. Gerald did not say anything. He didn't care about the cement anymore. He took the card and ran to New Bank nonstop. New Bank was a very mysterious bank in America. It was not large in scale and did not accept deposits below $1.6 million. In other words, it was a bank that only had the rich as its clients. The bank became the choice of millions of wealthy people because of its high secrecy. Gerald ran and found the bank. The reason why he ran was that he did not have a single cent. As long as he got paid at the construction site, he would give all of it to Irene and Mary. He exhaled and walked inside. Yet just as he took a few steps, he was stopped by the security guard at the door. The guard looked at him with a frown and said, This is New Bank. No trespassers are allowed in. Gerald quickly said, I am here to do business. Business. The security guard looked at him with a faint smile. Then he said, Do you know what kind of bank this is? Can someone like you do business here? The security guard thought, as a security guard at New Bank, I have seen too many clients who come here to make deposits or other businesses. Most of them are flashy, either driving luxury cars or wearing famous brands. And this man, he has just come out of a construction site. He is so dirty. His hair is unkempt, mixed with cement ash, and the white vest he is wearing is almost black. Not to mention that he is wearing a pair of ragged sneakers. He is no different from a beggar. How can a man like him do business at New Bank? Gerald. Suddenly, a woman behind Gerald said. Hearing her voice, Gerald couldn't help but tremble. He was so familiar with the voice. It was his wife, no. To be more precise, it was his ex-wife, Irene. He slowly turned around. Sure enough, not far away, a new BMW pulled up, and then a man and a woman stepped down from it. The woman was wearing light makeup and was very beautiful. After she got off, she took the man's arm very naturally. They looked very intimate. Gerald was angry. She was so skilled. It seemed that those two had been together for a while now. On the contrary, Gerald had been married to Irene for 3 years, and he hadn't even touched her finger. So, this is Gerald. The two of them walked over. The man looked at Gerald with an insincere smile. There was a hint of arrogance in him. Your ex-husband. Nominally. Irene pursed her lips and glanced at Gerald in disgust. He hasn't even touched my finger once. Don't think too much. She looked at Gerald as she spoke. Gerald, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Adriel Hoffman. I think you have heard of him. Ads by Pub Future. She was right. Gerald had indeed heard of the man. Adriel was a famously rich and arrogant man in Los Angeles. Most of the people in Los Angeles knew Adriel's reputation. Of course, he didn't have a good one. Gerald was surprised that Adriel was Irene's new boyfriend. Adriel glanced at Gerald with a fake smile and said with a grin, "Thank you for taking care of Irene for me for the past 3 years." Irene curled her lips and said, "He? Taking care of me? What can he do? He can earn at most $1,600 each month. I can't even buy a bag. You are way better than him." She was insulting Gerald to his face. Gerald lowered his head, gritted his teeth, and became furious. "What are you doing here?" Irene frowned and asked. "I'm here for business," Gerald replied calmly. "Puff," Adriel sneered, "for business? Can you even enter the door?" As he spoke, he walked straight towards the door. The security guard who stopped Gerald didn't stop Adriel and instead said, with a smile, "Mr. Hoffman, this way." Irene glanced at Gerald with disgust. She held Adriel's hand and walked towards the bank. As she walked, Adriel said, "Irene, I gave you a BMW and bought you a fund of $80,000. I'm being sincere enough. Don't go home tonight." "Hey," Irene said coquettishly. Looking at them, Gerald clenched his fists. He glanced at the security guard and walked towards the door again. "Stop right there." The guard looked at Gerald and directly took out the electric baton from his pocket. He pointed at Gerald and threatened, "Leave. You are not qualified to enter." "I'm serious. I'm here for business," Gerald repeated. "What's going on?" Suddenly, a cold voice sounded behind them. Gerald turned to look. A tall, beautiful woman wearing a uniform and glasses stood behind him at some point. She looked at Gerald and then looked at the security guard. She frowned slightly. There was a work plate on her breasts with the words, "Kira Bender," on it. "The man said that he is here to do business." The security guard pointed at Gerald and said, "I suspect that he is up to no good. I didn't let him in." Kira glanced at Gerald, and her face showed a trace of vigilance. Yet she still asked, "You are here on business? Are you here to make a deposit or a withdrawal? Or something else?" "I want to check my balance," Gerald said honestly. The security guard said, "Ms. Bender, there's no need to talk to him. See his clothes. He is lying." Kira looked at Gerald and asked, "If so, you should have your bank card with you, right? Can you show it to me?" Gerald nodded. He took out the blue bank card from his pocket. Because of the dust on the card, he wiped it against his body carefully, yet it made the card dirtier. He was a little embarrassed, and he scratched his head. However, Kira's expression suddenly changed. She stared at the bank card and said with a trembling voice, "Diamond. Diamond card." Gerald was stunned and thought suspiciously, "Really? Is that woman not a liar? Was I really rich before?" Kira breathed out. Her chest was heaving. After a moment, she smiled at Gerald and said, "Respected Diamond client, we are very sorry that our security guard offended you. I will deal with him and make you satisfied." The security guard's face turned pale. Clang! The electric baton in his hand fell to the ground. He looked at Gerald and stuttered, "Respected. Respected Diamond client, I. Although he was just a security guard, he knew who Diamond card clients were. He had just stopped such a client. It might cost him his job. What was more, he might have to pay a large sum of money according to the agreement he signed with the bank. Kira didn't say anything to the guard anymore. She smiled at Gerald and said, "Please follow me. I will personally receive you." Gerald followed her blankly and walked into the bank. They directly passed through the lobby of the bank and walked towards the VIP seats in the back. There weren't many clients in New Bank. Only Irene and Adriel were in the lobby for now. When they saw Gerald walking towards the VIP seats, they were astonished. 2 minutes later, all of the employees in the bank were in an uproar. One of them was on the phone and said, "Hello, Director. We have a diamond card client in our branch right now. Please come to the bank at once." Irene and Adriel frowned. Irene looked at the staff at the counter and asked, "Hello there, are diamond card clients of a high level?" The staff smiled sweetly at Irene and said, "Our cards are divided into different levels. For example, Mr. Hoffman has a silver card, which can be owned by saving $160,000 here. And one can have a golden card with deposits of $1.6 million here or a platinum card by saving $16 million here. Diamond cards are rarely issued. I think only 9 diamond cards have been issued by the bank since its establishment." What? Irene was stunned, and then she looked at the VIP seats in astonishment. She thought, Gerald has nothing but brute force. How can he have a diamond card? That's impossible, Irene said to the staff. He is my ex-husband. I know very well what kind of person he is. He is just a worker at some construction site. He is a loser. Don't be fooled by him. The staff smiled and said, "That's above my pay grade. Our director is already on his way here to receive him personally." "All right, Irene. It's enough that you know who he is." Adriel looked in Gerald's direction with disdain. Then he said, "Ignore him. Don't let him interrupt our date." Irene nodded obediently. Before they left, she said to the staff, "I am serious. Be careful. Gerald is probably a liar. Don't be fooled by him." Meanwhile, Gerald was sitting on an extremely comfortable sofa. In front of him, Kira handed him a tablet and said, "Enter your password on this, and you will know your balance." Gerald let out a breath. He entered the date of birth on his ID card. The screen in front of him changed slightly, and then he saw a long string of numbers. On the tablet, the number began with 2, and it was followed by 8 zeros. This meant that the balance on this bank card was a total of $200 million. Hiss, Gerald gasped, and his entire body went limp on the sofa. Before this moment, he was a man who worked his ass off carrying a truck full of cement for $64. Now, suddenly, he had $200 million. It was simply unbelievable. Respected diamond card client, in fact, you do not need to care about the balance on your card. Diamond card holders are entitled to a lot of things. With your card, you can call up sufficient funds at our bank. Kira reminded him. Gerald paid no attention to her words. The number was astronomical for him. Countless ideas began to bubble up in his mind. He thought, the card is real. So, the woman didn't lie to me. I used to be a member of a secret army, and I am very powerful. I have untold riches. Irene and Mary kicked me out because of money. They even took the house that I worked so hard to buy for themselves. Irene hooked up with a rich man. I wonder what they will look like when they find out I'm a super rich man. Gerald did not wait for the director. He withdrew $3,200 and left with Kira's business card. He couldn't wait to say goodbye to his current life. Before he left, Kira told him that in Los Angeles, he could call her if there was anything the bank could help solve. Everything. After leaving the bank, he hailed a taxi and went straight to the construction site. Of course, he wasn't going to carry the cement anymore. He was going to grab the bag he left at the security booth. It was things from 3 years ago, and he had to take them away. As soon as he arrived at the door of the construction site, Gerald heard someone cursing. Where is Gerald? He should have unloaded this car of cement in the morning. Where the fuck is he? Does he want his job or not? Can he take responsibility for delaying the construction period? At the door, a chubby man with a hard hat, a suit, and a briefcase was shouting. It was Gerald's foreman, Simeon Sainsbury, an extremely mean person. He was often in arrears of wages. A slightly emaciated young man walked up to Simeon and said with a smile, "Gerald probably has something to do. When he comes back, I will help him. There is still enough time." Gerald felt warm in his heart. The young man was the only friend he had made over the past 3 years, called Trevin. Not Ads by Pub Future. Gerald and Trevin often worked on the same construction site, and their ages were similar. They gradually became familiar with each other. Humph. Anyway, it's his task. If he fails to finish it, I'll take 2 days' pay off him. Simeon glanced at Trevin out of the corner of his eye. Trevin forced a smile and said, "Well, Simeon, I still have an unpaid salary of more than $1,600. Can you pay me now? You know, my kid is sick." Simeon frowned and scolded, "What are you urging for? The construction period has not been settled yet. The higher-ups haven't paid me. How could I have the money to pay you?" "Simeon, my kid's life depends on it," Trevin continued. "I don't have it." Simeon glanced at Trevin. Then Simeon took out $80 from his briefcase and said, "Here are $80. Well, Trevin was reluctant. "If you don't want it, fuck off." Simeon glared at Trevin and scolded him. "You don't want the job, do you? He just told you that his kid's life depends on it." Gerald let out a breath and said, "You are so mean." Simeon turned around. When he saw Gerald, he narrowed his eyes and glared at Gerald. "What does it have to do with you? You want to quit as well, don't you? I asked you to unload the cement in the morning. Where the hell did you go? You went to slack off, didn't you? I'll deduct your salary for 2 days. Piss off if you are unhappy." Gerald breathed out. He glanced at the bulletin board on the construction site, which had the words, "New Bank" written on it. Obviously, the development of the site had something to do with New Bank. Gerald walked up to Simeon with a sullen face and said calmly, "I have had a problem with you for days till now. Trevin and I will quit. However, you have to pay us before that." Simeon was stunned. He obviously did not expect Gerald to say that. Then he sneered and said, "You want to quit? No problem. You and Trevin can pack your things and get lost. I will give the money to you after the higher-ups pay me." Gerald sneered in his heart. He knew what Simeon meant. Trevin and he would never have the money. Trevin's expression changed. He constantly winked at Gerald, indicating for Gerald to stop. Gerald was still calm and said, "I mean, give us the money now." "What if I say no?" Simeon looked at Gerald with disdain and said, "Sue me, or hit me now." "Hit you?" Gerald breathed out and said, "It will only stain my hands." The disdain on Simeon's face was even more obvious. He curled his lips and glanced at Gerald. "Then just get lost. I don't have time for this. You asked for it." Gerald breathed out once more. He took out his phone and found Kiera's card. Seeing that, Simeon sneered, "TSK, TSK. People who don't know might think you are some big guy. Who are you calling? You are just a loser with brute force. You will be a lowly worker for the rest of your life. Hey, at least you have a beautiful wife. What a shame. You work your ass for me here like a dog, trying to earn money to support your family. You have no idea, right? She is cheating on you. I've bumped into your wife and Adriel shopping together intimately several times. Or do you just love to be a cuckold?" Simeon looked at Gerald with disdain. Meanwhile, Trevin's expression changed as he said, "Simeon, don't go too far." Simeon glanced at them and sneered, "You just said you wanted to quit. Now get out of here. Pay me my money." When Trevin saw that Simeon was about to leave, he became a little anxious. Neither of them looked at Gerald. Neither Simeon nor Trevin, who was friends with Gerald, paid any attention to Gerald, who was making a call. Neither of them thought Gerald's call would change anything. Beep, beep, beep. The call was connected. Kiera's pleasant voice sounded, "Hello, Mr. Kenneth. How did you know it was me?" Gerald asked subconsciously. "I don't usually give my number to anyone. Anyone who knows my number has a note on my side. Your caller ID was unknown. So I could figure it out," Kiera explained patiently. Gerald was slightly stunned. He coughed and said, "Ems. Bender, you said before that I can call you if I need anything, and New Bank will help me solve it, right?" "Yes," Kiera said. "Have you encountered any trouble?" Gerald let out a breath. "Do you know the development of the Four-Season Garden? I work here, and I saw the New Bank's advertisement here. Our bank is currently developing the building. Have you encountered any problems there?" Kiera asked patiently. "Yes, there is a contractor who bullies the workers. He is not willing to settle the wages of my friend and me." Gerald glanced at Simeon, who was not far away, and said softly, "Really?" Kiera's tone became slightly cold. "How do you want to deal with him? As long as he suffers." Gerald exhaled. "Sure. Please wait a moment. Give me 5 minutes." Kiera hung up the phone after she finished speaking. Gerald narrowed his eyes and looked at Simeon not far away. He muttered, "Is this the feeling of being rich and powerful?" Not far away, Simeon and Trevin did not know who Gerald had called, nor did they know what Gerald had said. Simeon pushed the emaciated Trevin away and scolded, "Stop pestering me. From now on, you and Gerald can fuck off. Stop wasting my time." Simeon then looked at Gerald with disdain and said, "Hey, weren't you calling someone? How come I am still standing here? Untact. You pair of losers." After that, he turned around and walked towards the construction site. Trevin was very upset. He approached Gerald and said with a bitter smile, "Gerald, you are way too impulsive. He has our salaries. Now that we have a conflict with him, I am afraid we won't get our money back." He became worried and sighed. "Liam is still waiting for the money for his chemo treatment this month." "It's fine," Gerald smiled and said. "Simeon is doomed." "What?" Trevin was stunned for a moment, and then he shook his head. He didn't take Gerald's words seriously. At the door of the construction site, Gerald went back to the security booth and took back his things from the security guard. Trevin stood next to Gerald with a bitter face and said, "Well, Gerald, you are too impulsive. There aren't as many people in the construction field as you think. Simeon knows a lot of contractors. Now that we offend him, I don't think we can continue to earn a living in Los Angeles. Besides, we won't get our money back. Liam is still waiting for the money for his chemo, and you have to give the money to your wife and your mother-in-law, or they will scold you again. Irene and I have already divorced." Gerald let out a breath. "What?" Trevin was stunned. "You guys have divorced?" "Yes. To be precise, she and her mother kicked me out. I signed the papers this morning. They packed my things and threw them out." Gerald gave a wry smile and lifted the garbage bag in his hand. "Well," Trevin smiled bitterly, "I told you to put down your name on the deed back then, and you said it was fine. Forget it. I have enough on my plate. Liam will have a chemo tomorrow." Trevin became sad again. He looked at Gerald and said, "Now that they kicked you out, you don't have a place to live, right? You can go to my place for a while." Gerald's heart warmed slightly. He thought, "So far, Trevin hasn't blamed me. He hasn't quarreled with me. Since we can't get our money back, what's more, he offers to take me in. He is indeed a friend worth making." "Don't worry." Confidently, "Simeon will be back in less than 5 minutes. He will beg us to give us the money back." Gerald smiled. Trevin curled his lips and said, "Yeah, right. I know you, okay. That's enough talking. We have lost our jobs anyway. Let's go back to my place now. No rush." A confident smile appeared on Gerald's face. Meanwhile, Simeon walked towards the construction site and smiled disdainfully. "Two losers. How dare you quarrel with me? Who gave you the nerve? I will make your lives in Los Angeles miserable." Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, his phone rang. He took out his phone and glanced at the screen, and then his expression changed slightly. He quickly picked up the phone. Although he couldn't see the other party's face, he still smiled flatteringly. "Hello, Mr. Hawthorne. What can I do for you?" "Rest assured, I will complete the project on time, and the quality will be guaranteed. You don't have to do it anymore," a cold voice said on the other end of the line. Ads by Pub Future. "What?" Simeon's expression changed slightly. "What did you say?" Aidan Hawthorne said calmly, "I said, you may step down. We have already found someone else to do the job. In addition, we found that you've cut corners a lot in your previous projects. We have already joined forces with several other real estate companies to sue you. You will receive the lawyer's letter tomorrow. Be prepared to lose everything." Simeon's expression changed drastically. He quickly said, "Mr. Hawthorne, is there a misunderstanding here?" "Misunderstanding? Gerald, you know him, right?" Aidan's voice on the phone became even colder. "Gerald, he works for me. He is just a loser. He..." Suddenly, Simeon thought of the call Gerald made just now, and his face twitched. "Blame yourself for messing with the wrong person. After Aiden finished speaking, he directly hung up the phone. Simeon was stunned, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The image of Gerald, who wore a worn vest all year round, appeared in his mind. He was on the verge of collapsing. At the door of the construction site, Trevor looked at Gerald and said, "Why are you still standing here? Let's go." Tinkle. Suddenly, Trevor's phone rang. He picked up the phone and glanced at the screen. He received a transfer from Simeon. It was a full $3,200, which was $500 more than his salary deducted by Simeon. At the same time, he saw a chubby figure not far away running madly toward them. Who else could it be but Simeon? For a moment, Trevor was stunned. He glanced at Simeon and then looked at Gerald next to him. He swallowed his saliva and felt his mind was a mess. Meanwhile, Simeon had already run to Gerald and Trevor. Simeon's fat face was full of sweat, which was probably because of tiredness or fear. He trembled, took out a box of cigarettes, opened it, and handed a cigarette to Gerald, saying, "Gerald. Gerald, have one." Gerald did not pick up the cigarette. He turned on his phone and checked the transfer record. After accepting the money, he transferred the extra part back to Simeon and said, "I will only take my share of the money. Gerald, I was wrong. I sincerely apologize to you. Can you please be generous and spare me?" Simeon said, flatteringly. Simeon was completely different from the arrogant him from before. Gerald glanced at him and said, "What you have done has nothing to do with me. I just want to get back the money I deserve. The rest has nothing to do with me." After that, he turned around and looked at Trevor, who was stunned, and said, "Let's go." Plop. Simeon slumped to the ground and muttered, "I'm doomed. Damn. What's going on?" Trevor was dumbfounded. Gerald smiled and did not explain anything. He had no way to explain this to Trevor. Gerald thought, "The woman said I used to be in the secret army. Then there must be a lot I can't say. I can't tell Trevor anything without confirmation. Besides, even if I told him, he wouldn't believe me." Gerald glanced at Simeon, and then pulled Trevor and left the construction site. He no longer cared about Simeon. Simeon had it coming. "You weren't behind this, were you?" After walking for a while, Trevor was still in disbelief. "What do you think?" Gerald asked with a smile. "I don't think so. I know who you are. If you are capable of this, why would you work your ass off on the construction site in the first place? And your wife wouldn't." Instead of continuing, Trevor grinned and changed the topic. He said, "Tell me honestly. Did you get any goods on Simeon?" Gerald smiled, "Maybe." Trevor smiled and said, "I knew it. Well, it feels good to get our money back anyway. Watch out." On the sidewalk, a woman was riding a motorcycle. Without braking, she headed straight for Gerald. Gerald naturally saw her as well and quickly dodged to the side. Because of that, the woman's motorcycle tilted, and she crashed into a nearby tree. The papers on her motorcycle were scattered all over the ground. On the motorcycle sat a young and beautiful girl. Seeing that she did not hit anyone, she heaved a sigh of relief. Then she turned around and saw Gerald. She said in astonishment, "Gerald." Gerald also recognized her and frowned slightly. It was Vivian Everett, Irene's cousin. Gerald did not have a good impression of the whole family. Vivian came from a relatively rich family. Her parents were teachers, and Vivian had a decent job. When Irene married Gerald at the beginning, Vivian and her parents opposed it strongly. It was Sheldon who stood up to it and arranged for Irene to marry Gerald. Vivian and her parents never treated Gerald nicely. "Gerald, are you blind?" Vivian glared at Gerald and said, "Didn't you see my motorcycle coming over? You made me hit the tree." Gerald was speechless. In these 3 years, he had always been humiliated by Irene's relatives and friends. He had basically endured their ridicule. But now, he was divorced, and he was no longer that man. He sneered and said, "You were riding on the sidewalk, and you almost hit me. And you are blaming me. Do you think you are the righteous one?" Vivian said, "Your dirty appearance disgusts me. I don't get it. Why did Sheldon insist on Irene marrying you? I'm glad that you two are divorced. I'm glad that Irene has found her happiness. You deserve it." Gerald's eyes flashed with a cold light. Vivian and Irene were families indeed. "What is it? Do you want to get physical?" Seeing Gerald's fierce eyes, Vivian was not afraid at all. Instead, she stepped forward and scolded him. You are so unreasonable. Trevin, who was at the side, couldn't stand it anymore. Vivian glanced at him and whispered, what has it got to do with you? Trevin wanted to say something, but Gerald stopped him. Gerald looked at Vivian and said, I don't bother arguing with you. Remember, all of you will regret it in the future, including you, Irene, and your relatives. Regret? About what? Losing you, a worker working your ass off on a construction site every day. Vivian said, disdainfully. Gerald didn't want to waste his time on her. He let out a breath and said, Trevin, let's go. Seeing that Gerald was about to leave, Vivian quickly scolded, stop right there. My motorcycle was wrecked. You'll have to pay for it, and pick these papers on the ground up. Gerald was anxious. He thought, people like you just think of me as a pushover, don't you? He slowly let out a breath, ignored Vivian, turned, and left with Trevin. Humph. Loser. Looking at Gerald's back, Vivian curled her lips and said disdainfully. After walking for a while, Trevin said helplessly, come to think of it, are you going to let it slide just like that? I did my best to take care of them. I worked my ass off earning money, and when I was back home, I had to cook for them and do chores. Anger flashed across Gerald's face. He said, and now, they kicked me away just like that. If something hadn't happened, I would have slept on the construction site today. How could I have let it slide? Trevin sighed, maybe you should. Irene hooked up with Adriel. Adriel comes from a rich family in Los Angeles, and hasn't. Irene's uncle opened a company as well. We are commoners, and we are no match for them. Trevin was telling the truth. Irene's uncle opened a company, but it was not very big. Gerald once proposed to go to Irene's uncle's company to work, but Irene's uncle thought that Gerald could do nothing and would only accept Gerald as a security guard there. The salary was too low to support Irene and Mary. That was why Gerald came to the construction site. Gerald curled his lips and did not say anything. Trevin lived alone. He rented a single room in the old district of Los Angeles. Like Gerald, Trevin didn't lead a satisfying life. On the contrary, his life was worse. Trevin was born in the countryside and was married and had a kid when he was 20 years old. Later, when he came to the city, his wife left, and he hadn't heard from her since then. The worst part was that his son, Liam Knott, was diagnosed with a congenital disease and had to undergo chemo once a month. Trevin was thin, but he worked the hardest since Liam might have died otherwise. When Trevin and Gerald got back to Trevin's place, Trevin changed his clothes and said, you can stay here. I'll go to school to pick up Liam for his chemo. Fix something for yourself. I remember that an operation can cure Liam, right? Gerald asked. Yes, but it costs $50,000. You know that I spend all my salary on Liam's chemo every month. I can't afford $50,000 at all, Trevin sighed. I can pay for it, Gerald said. Trevin was stunned for a moment, and then he said in disbelief, don't mess with me. I'll go pick up Liam now. After that, he no longer said anything. He opened the door and left. Ads by Pub Future. Gerald smiled bitterly, touched his nose, and said, sure enough. No one wants to believe I'm suddenly rich. He shook his head, went to the bathroom to take a shower, changed his clothes, and tidied up his things. He frowned slightly. Not all of his things were here. There was an iron box that he had held in his arms when he was saved. It was just that he could not remember what it was. Later, it was used by Mary and Irene to pad things on the balcony. Now it seemed that the box had a lot to do with the mission he lost his memory on. I have to go back, Gerald muttered. When he thought of Irene and Mary, his face went sullen. I remember Vivian working in a company called Glory World as an HR worker, Gerald thought, took out his phone, and found Kiera's number. Soon, Kiera's pleasant voice sounded from the other end of the line. She said, hello, Mr. Kenneth. Is there anything I can help you with? Do you know a company called Glory World? Gerald asked. Yes, it's a relatively large logistics company in Los Angeles, and it has some business dealings with our bank. It just so happens that I am in charge of contacting, Kiera said. Gerald pondered for a moment, exhaled, and said, then Can I buy the company with the funds I have? Oh, you want to acquire Glory World? Kiera asked in astonishment. Yes, Gerald nodded. You have enough funds to buy the company. Its market value is about $32 million. Your cash flow alone will be more than enough, Kiera said, nodding. Great. I don't know much about acquisitions. Can I hire you to help me with it? Your pay can be negotiated. If it's possible, sooner the better, said Gerald. Kiera smiled. No problem. I'll take care of it for you today, and you can just sign the contract tomorrow. Thank you, Gerald quickly said. After hanging up the phone, Gerald smiled and said to himself, I am so looking forward to seeing Vivian's expression when she finds me sitting in her CEO's office. He thought, tomorrow, that beautiful woman will pick me up at the construction site. I hope that she can help me recover my memory by then. I am the legendary slaughterer of a secret army. He sat in situ and organized his thoughts. Then he got up and left the place, planning to bring the iron box back before everything. When he went out, he habitually took the subway home. Over the past 3 years, saving has become his habit. When he arrived in the neighborhood, he went straight home. No, to be more precise, it was his former home. When he reached the door, he took out his key and was just about to open the door when he heard a burst of laughter from the room. Irene, congratulations. You finally got rid of Gerald, that loser. Do you know that I ran into him today? He was dressed like a beggar. I'm glad that you found yourself a handsome and rich boyfriend. I'm so envious. I heard that he gave you a BMW and even bought you a fund of tens of thousands of dollars. It was Vivian's voice. Gerald was slightly surprised that Irene wasn't stupid enough to spend the night with Adriel. Hey, you are so pretty. I'm sure you'll find a husband richer and more handsome than Adriel, Irene said with a smile. I hope you're right. Anyway, it's a good thing that you're divorced, Gerald. What was Sheldon thinking back then? Why did he insist on you marrying Gerald? What does Gerald have but brute force? Nothing. We are in the 21st century now. Physical force means nothing. A man like him will only be at the bottom of society for his entire life. Another voice sounded. It was Vivian's father, Leroy Everett. Hey, forget about that loser. We should congratulate Irene on finding a rich husband. After so many years, she has finally made it out. That's right. Immediately, everyone echoed. Gerald was at the door, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. The divorce between him and Irene was like a festival for the family inside. Phew. Gerald exhaled and inserted the key. He twisted it and found that he couldn't unlock it. The lock had been changed. He sneered and then knocked on the door. Who is it? A voice came from inside the room. Then the door was opened. Mary was standing at the door. When she saw Gerald, she was stunned for a moment and then said impatiently, "Why are you back? Stop pestering Irene and me." In the living room, there was a large table. At this time, more than a dozen people were sitting at it. When they saw Gerald, their faces showed undisguised disdain. "I came back to get something," Gerald said calmly. "Haven't I already sent your things over?" "I have already tossed the rest away," Mary said and was about to close the door. Gerald pressed his hand against the door and said, "There is an iron box at the bottom of a box on the balcony. I had it in my arms when Sheldon saved me. I have to take it away." As he spoke, he was about to walk in. "Don't come in. I'll go get it for you." "Don't stay in my place," Mary hurriedly said. Gerald was furious. He thought, "Stay in your place. I bought this place. And I was also the one who mopped the floor." Yet he did not go in. He just sneered in his heart and thought, "Tomorrow. Just wait till tomorrow. I am looking forward to seeing your expressions after I acquire the company Vivian works for." He stood at the door. In the living room, Irene's relatives looked at him with disgust. The originally lively living room became quiet. Because of his arrival, Irene frowned. She got up and walked to the door. She looked at Gerald and said, "I know that you are resentful and think that my mother and I have gone too far. But you should know that I'm out of your league," Irene said. "I married you mainly to fulfill my father's wishes." Gerald snorted and ignored her. "Take your box and don't come to see me ever again." "I don't want to upset Adriel," Irene said. Meanwhile, Mary walked to the door with a small metal box covered with dust between her fingers and threw it at Gerald. All right, you can go now. Gerald took the iron box and felt slightly relieved. Then he looked into the room and sneered, "You will regret it." "Regret it? Gerald, come on. If you really manage to do something big, I will stay single forever." "In the room," Vivian said. Disdainfully. Gerald raised his head and looked at her. His lips curled into a smile. "Remember your words." None of Irene's family cared about Gerald's words. After Mary threw the box at Gerald, she slammed the door shut. Looking at the closed door in front of him, Gerald touched his nose, sneered, and turned to leave. The three-bedroom house, with unit number 72, was located in Building 6 of Cherry Garden. Gerald worked his ass off to buy the house, but now, he was no longer qualified to live here. He ate something outside and then took the subway back to Treven's place. When he was on the subway, Kiera called him and told him that she had already reached a deal with Glory World. The other party agreed to be wholly acquired, and Kiera managed to settle the price at $30.4 million, which saved Gerald a lot of money. They were about to sign the contract at 10 tomorrow morning. Gerald was ecstatic. He was looking forward to tomorrow. By then, Vivian's expressions should be very interesting. Meanwhile, maybe he could recover his memory tomorrow. With mixed feelings, he crashed out on Treven's chairs at night. The next day, he said bye to Treven and left Treven's place. Then he checked the address of Glory World online and took the subway there. At 9:30 a.m., he successfully arrived at his destination. Glory World was the largest logistics company in Los Angeles with a 6-story high office building. When Gerald walked to the door, the security guard at the door stopped him and said, "Stop. What are you doing here?" Gerald was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Well, I guess I'm here to work." "Work? Where is your work pass?" The security guard walked in front of Gerald and asked. This security guard was a man who looked less than 30 years old, and he was quite sturdy. Just as Gerald was about to explain, a voice suddenly came from behind him. "Gerald." Gerald looked over. Behind him, Vivian stopped at the door of the company while riding her motorcycle. "Hey there, Vivian. You are late again today. Be careful not to be scolded," said the security guard. "I've told the boss already." "What is he doing here?" Vivian asked. "He said he came here to work," the security guard explained. "Work? Are you here to be a security guard?" Vivian looked at Gerald with a fake smile and asked. "Didn't you say yesterday that you would make our family regret it? Are you going to do so by being a security guard here?" Gerald sneered. "You will know later. Maybe. I only know that you will regret it now," Vivian sneered. Ads by Pub Future. The eyes of the security guard standing at the door lit up. From the conversation between Gerald and Vivian, he could tell that the two were not on good terms. The security guard felt the need to stand up right now and show off in front of a beauty like Vivian. What if he could get a chance to be with her? He glanced at Gerald and said, "Are you here to be a security guard?" "Who hired you?" 1 a.m. The security captain. "How come I don't know about this?" "There's no need for you to be here. Get lost." Gerald glanced at him and calmly asked, "Since when did a security captain have the right to fire others?" "You." Anger flashed across the security captain's face. "He doesn't have the right to fire you, but someone does," Vivian sneered. At the same time, she took out her phone and made a phone call. She said sweetly, "Hello, boss, someone at our company hired a security guard I don't particularly like. Can you make him go away?" "Yes, I am at the door. I'll wait for you here," Vivian said. Then she hung up the phone, looked at Gerald, and said, "In case you don't know, I work in human resources at this company. My boss is the director. It takes no time to fire you." Sure enough, 2 minutes later, a middle-aged man in a suit came out of the door. When he saw Vivian, he smiled and said, "Vivian, you are late again." From the way he looked at Vivian, it could be seen that he was Vivian's pursuer. From Vivian's eyes, Gerald could tell that she was not interested in the so-called human resources director at all. She simply regarded him as a backup. The man went downstairs, glanced at Gerald, and said, "Is he the new security guard?" Vivian quickly nodded and said, "Yes." The man looked at Gerald and sized Gerald up. "You can go now." Then he turned to Vivian and said, "Vivian, let's go up. I have prepared breakfast for you. Vivian glanced at Gerald proudly. Then she smiled with disdain and said satirically, I regret it so much. After saying that, she pushed her motorcycle and walked to the office building with the HR director. Gerald did not say anything. He touched his nose. After a few minutes, seeing that Gerald was not leaving, the security captain glared at Gerald and said, Why are you still here? Piss off. Gerald glanced at the security captain coldly. The man's expression changed, and he said, How dare you glare at me, do you want me to teach you a lesson? Beep. At this time, a Benz slowly came over. Someone honked the horn. The window rolled down, and in the back seat, a middle-aged man stuck his head out and said, What's going on? The security captain quickly bowed and said, Boss, it's nothing. I'll open the door for you right now. Mr. Kenneth. Meanwhile, a pleasant voice sounded from the other side of the back row. Gerald looked inside the car and found Kiera, who was wearing glasses and a uniform, sitting in the car. Hearing that, the middle-aged man looked at Gerald in surprise and said, He is Mr. Kenneth, the one who wants to buy our company. Kiera nodded. Yes. The middle-aged man hurriedly opened the door and got out of the car. Under the stunned gaze of the security captain, he walked to Gerald and said, Mr. Kenneth, I am impressed. You can buy our company at such a young age. Quote. Kiera also came down and winked at Gerald. Then she smiled and said, Let me introduce you. This is Tyrone Slater. Tyrone frowned and said, Mr. Kenneth, why didn't you go upstairs but wait for me there? The security captain's forehead was covered in a cold sweat. He swallowed his saliva and said, Mr. Slater, are you sure? I thought he was here to be a security guard in our company. Seeing the security captain's reaction, Tyrone figured out what was going on. He looked at the security captain and smiled. This, Mr. Kenneth will be your new boss later. What? The security captain's expression changed dramatically. Tyrone did not say anything more. He made a gesture of invitation and said, Let's go inside and talk. Gerald smiled and nodded. Then he looked at the security captain and said, You can go now. The process of signing the contract was not complicated. Gerald signed and put his fingerprints on it, and Kiera did all the paperwork. It didn't cause an uproar in the company. Only a few higher-ups in the company knew about the acquisition. At 10:30 a.m., the purchase contract officially came into effect. Gerald let out a breath, looked at the executive president of the company, and said, First thing first, fire the HR director. Find a new one. The executive president was stunned. Such a request from Gerald surprised him. Yet he just nodded and said, Okay. I'm getting on it now. One of the offices on the third floor was for the Human Resources Department. At this time, in the office, Duncan Harrod, the director, was sitting beside Vivian. He smiled and asked, The cupcake is delicious, right? I drove almost 10 miles this morning to get it for you. Watch a movie with me after work today, okay? No one in the department was surprised. Everyone in the department knew that Duncan was interested in Vivian. Vivian pouted. Just as she was about to speak, a person walked in from the entrance. No need to wait after work. Duncan's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly stood up and lowered his head. Mr. Lowell. Bailey Lowell glanced at Duncan and said calmly, Go to the accountant and settle your paycheck. Then pack up and leave. Duncan was stunned. He said in astonishment, Mr. Lowell, what do you mean? What do I mean? Bailey looked at Duncan. Then he said, Simple. You are fired. Duncan was stunned. He thought he had heard Bailey wrong. Duncan thought, I'm fired. I'm fired without any warning. Beside him, Vivian was also slightly stunned. In the next second, a faint smile appeared on her lips and disappeared in an instant. For her, Duncan was just a backup. In fact, Duncan was kind of capable. He had already made it to the HR director of the largest logistics company in Los Angeles at such a young age with an annual salary of tens of thousands of dollars. Yet Vivian had very high standards. She became even pickier after seeing Irene being together with Adriel. In her eyes, she was as good as Irene, and she could find someone like Adriel. Maybe she could do better than Irene. Of course, their standards were based on those men's economic strength. Mr. Lowell, what is going on? Duncan no longer cared about Vivian's expression. After a brief moment of shock, he hurriedly asked. Bailey glanced at Duncan indifferently and said, "Our company has been acquired. Our new boss is a young man. The first order he issued is to fire you. There's nothing I can do." Duncan wanted to ask more, but Bailey had already turned around and said, "I have things to do." "You know who you have offended." After saying that, Bailey turned around and left. Duncan slumped on the chair beside him. He thought, yes, I've offended someone, but not someone who is capable enough to acquire the company. I feel so wronged. Meanwhile, after the acquisition process was complete, under Kira's advice, Tyrone chose to stay in the company and continue to preside over the company's business. However, he was now on Gerald's paycheck, while Gerald got to be the boss behind the scene. It was a good thing for Gerald since he was a layman. He was happy to leave the things for the professionals. After everything was settled, Kira got up and said, "Okay then, I guess my job here is done. I will leave now." Gerald also stood up and said, "I have something to do as well. Let's leave together." So far, Kira had not mentioned her payment ads by Pub Future. In fact, Gerald would like to appear in front of Vivian as the boss now, but he had something to do and must leave. The pretty woman with short hair had been coming to him around noon these days, and now it was almost time. Kira held up her glasses and revealed a sweet smile. She said, "Okay." Kira and Gerald walked out of the company. Gerald let out a breath and said, "Ems. Bender, I should thank you for this. And I'm afraid that I will have to trouble you a lot from now on. How much do you think I should pay you?" Kira smiled. "Forget about that. You are a diamond card client of our bank. We will fully cooperate with." Gerald was stunned. He was surprised that the diamond card clients were so prestigious in New Bank. "Of course, if you do want to thank me, you can do me a favor and accompany me to a dinner party tonight," Kira smiled sweetly. "Simply put, I want you to pretend to be my boyfriend." Gerald was stunned for a moment. Then he nodded and said, "No problem." Kira's eyes lit up slightly. Then she nodded and said, "You can't go back on your word. I'll call you in the evening and pick you up." Gerald nodded. While they were talking, they arrived at the door. After saying goodbye to each other, they each took a taxi and left. At 11:20 a.m., Gerald arrived at the door of the construction site on time. Sure enough, upon his arrival, he saw the short-haired girl carrying a lunch box and coming out of the construction site, looking disappointed. When she saw Gerald, her eyes lit up. Then she trotted all the way towards him. "I thought you were not coming," she said to Gerald with a smile. "I went to the bank to check my balance yesterday. You didn't lie to me." Gerald breathed out. "Does that mean you are willing to go back with me?" the short-haired girl asked, her eyes lighting up. Gerald nodded and said, "Yes." "Awesome." The pretty girl waved her fists. Then she said, "Finally. Watchman number 0 is coming back." "Watchman number O." Gerald frowned. "What do you mean?" "We are a secret army, and every one of us has a unique code name. Most of the code names are based on numbers. The better one is, the higher the ranking. You used to be the greatest at night watch. You are Watchman No. You are the strongest weapon." Then she said awkwardly, "However, because you have been missing for 3 years, many people think that you died in the last large-scale mission, so now the title belongs to someone else. But I'm confident that you can get it back as long as you recover your memory." Gerard scratched his head, completely lost. He coughed and said, "What should I do to recover my memory?" The short-haired girl said, "Well, I will take you to see Drive Manning now. She is the best doctor in night watching. Also one of the best doctors in the world." Gerald nodded and said, "Okay. By the way, I still don't know your name yet." The girl was stunned for a moment, and then she scratched her head. "I am number 66 now. As for my name, you should be able to remember it once you recover your memory." Gerald felt weird. He wasn't used to calling people by numbers. The girl stopped a car, and then they got in. Their destination was not a hospital or a clinic, but a place that Gerald was very familiar with. They were going to the Cherry Garden. Indeed, the Cherry Garden was their destination. "I needed to do some preparations to bring you back, so I bought a place in the building next to yours. Doctor." Manning and I live there. The short-haired girl smiled and said. Soon, they arrived at their destination. Dr. Manning was called Valerie Manning. She was a female doctor, who was different from Gerald's imagination. He had thought that Valerie was elderly, but he was wrong. Valerie was very beautiful. She was even more beautiful than Irene, and she looked less than 30 years old. She was very young. When Valerie saw Gerald, she didn't look nice. She looked at Gerald coldly and raised her beautiful eyebrows. Lost your memory, Gerald said, kind of. Go to the sofa and lie down, Valerie said coldly. I am going to get something. After that, she turned around and walked to the bedroom. Gerald was a little embarrassed. He coughed and asked in a low voice, well, did I owe Drive Manning money? Not really, the short-haired girl chuckled and said. When you were in night watch, you had been pursuing Drive Manning and said that she was the only one you would marry. We found you this time, and when we looked into your profile and found out that you were married, Drive Manning seemed a little angry. Does she like the old me? Gerald asked in surprise. He thought, was I so powerful? I could manage to attract a beauty like her. Well, no, Dr. Manning turned you down countless times. The short-haired girl chuckled. Gerald was speechless. He thought, then why is she mad that I'm married? Cut the crap. Meanwhile, Valerie walked out. Then she took out a pocket watch from her pocket and said indifferently, look at the pocket watch. The pocket watch began to sway from side to side. Gerald's gaze followed the pocket watch. Valerie spoke up. Her voice was no longer cold, instead, it became very gentle. Gradually, Gerald felt sleepy. He slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, he kept hearing her gentle murmur. You are Gerald Kenneth, born in Los Angeles. When you were 18, you. With the guidance of Valerie's voice, countless scenes began to emerge in Gerald's mind. Countless memories began to emerge in Gerald's mind. Gerald was not born in Los Angeles but in Sacramento. He was the young heir of the Kenneth family in Sacramento. The Kenneth family could be considered a rich family, but Gerald's family was only a side branch of the clan. However, compared to most people, they were already considered rich and powerful. At the age of 18, Gerald met an old man. The young Gerald was fooled into becoming a watchman, as a member of Night Watch. For 6 years, in this organization, Gerald showed his terrifying martial arts talent. In a year, he made special achievements. In the 3rd year, after he became a watchman, he won the highest honor of the watchman, the Medal of Star Glory. He successfully became the unique watchman No. Some people called Gerald Slaughterer because he was always decisive to kill any enemy when he was on a mission. 3 years ago, Gerald, Watchman number 2, and Watchman number 7 received a secret mission and came to Los Angeles. As a result, they were ambushed by the enemy. Watchman number 7 died on the spot. In the mixed fight, he and Watchman No. 2 were separated. Gerald took the mission item and slaughtered all the way to get out of the ambush, but he could not hold out for long and fainted. When Gerald woke up again, he was already lying in the hospital. It was Shelton who saved him. Later, Shelton treated him very well. But now that Gerald thought about it, it was because Shelton found something about him and thought that Gerald was a big shot. That was why he let Irene marry Gerald. And as Watchman No. Gerald had accumulated a considerable amount of wealth in the past 6 years. The $200 million on the diamond card was only the tip of the iceberg. The gentle murmur in Gerald's ears continued. Do you remember? You were once a figure that made this world tremble with fear. You were the light chaser of Watchmen. Those who were hidden in the dark would be frightened when they heard your name. You are Watchman No. Holy Lord of Sin City. You have countless blood on your hands, and you have saved countless lives. Countless scenes and memories appeared in Gerald's mind. After an unknown period of time, Gerald slowly opened his eyes and saw a delicate face. Valerie sat on a chair. When she saw Gerald open his eyes, a cold smile appeared on her lips. How is it? At this time, the short-haired girl jumped over and asked. Gerald smiled at her and sat up. He reached out and rubbed her head. Yes, I remember now. After 3 years, you have become more and more beautiful, Macy. You remember me. The short-haired girl sounded excited. Yes, Gerald remembered. The girl in front of him was called Macy Wise, the girl who joined night watch under the guidance of Gerald. That was Gerald's first mission. 9 years ago, Macy was 12 years old. During that mission, Macy's parents both died. Gerald brought the 12-year-old Macy back to night watch's camp. Gerald let out a breath and looked at Valerie. He said, "Thanks, Drive Manning." Valerie snorted. "Thanks. I didn't expect you to say this word from your mouth. People always change." Gerald smiled, then pondered for a moment and asked, "Are those elder men and ladies okay?" "Ads by Pub Future. They are fine," Macy said with a smile, revealing her shallow dimples. She said excitedly, "Now that you have recovered your memories, it should be much easier for us to carry out this mission." Gerald pondered for a moment and asked, "What is your mission this time?" "Men of Blood Lotus," Valerie calmly said, "we have already lost 3 people." Gerald's gaze turned cold. If Irene's family saw Gerald's expression, they would probably feel that it was inconceivable. For the past 3 years, Gerald had always acted like a yes man, and they felt that Gerald was an honest ordinary person. But now, when Gerald heard Blood Lotus, his eyes were filled with endless killing intent. "Did you find Watchman No. 2? Gerald asked again. "I haven't found him yet, including the body of Watchman number 7, said Valerie. "Blood Lotus target this time is..." Beep, beep, beep. At this time, Gerald's phone suddenly rang. He took out his phone and saw that it was Kira calling. He looked at Valerie and Macy, then picked up the phone and said, "Hello, Ems. Bender, where are you now? I'm off work. You promised me that you would pretend to be my boyfriend and go to the dinner party with me. Give me the address, and I'll drive over to pick you up now." "On the other side of the line," Kira said. Gerald was surprised. He glanced at the time. It was already 5:30 in the afternoon. He actually slept for an entire afternoon. "I'm in the cherry garden. You can just drive over. Give me a call in advance." "I'll wait at the gate," Gerald said. "Okay. See you in 10 minutes. Kira said and hung up the phone. "I have something to do later and need to go out. Give me the key. I don't have a place to sleep now. I'll stay here tonight," Gerald said with a dry cough. Valerie snorted and ignored Gerald. She turned and walked to the bedroom. Macy's eyes lit up. She quickly found a key and handed it to Gerald. "This is the key, right? What is the target of Blood Lotus this time?" Gerald asked. "The daughter of the richest man in Los Angeles, Audrey Herman," Macy said. Gerald pondered and asked, "What is your plan?" "I can't explain it in such a short while. Just go to finish your thing now. We will tell you in detail when you come back," Macy said. Gerald did not ask further. He nodded and walked out the door. When Gerald closed the door, Macy smiled bitterly and said, "Dr. Manning, do you think he will agree to our plan? After all, he has just divorced. Even if he does not agree, he has to follow the plan." Valerie pushed open the door and said indifferently. Gerald naturally didn't know what their plan was. At the entrance of the community, a bright red car soon stopped. The car window was rolled down. Kira said to Gerald, "Get in the car." After getting in the car, Gerald asked, "What banquet is it?" "It is a banquet for the young people of some large enterprises in Los Angeles. It is called by the richest man in Los Angeles. Most of the young rich boys in Los Angeles will be present." Kira curled her lips and said, "The bank sent me over. I actually don't like this kind of entertainment. Those rich boys are really..." After saying that, she smiled bitterly and said, "So, I have to trouble you." "It's okay." Gerald touched his nose and said. Indeed, Kira was beautiful and single. She was also capable. There must be a lot of people pursuing her. Kira glanced at Gerald's clothes and wanted to say something, but in the end, she was too embarrassed to say it and started the car. Half an hour later, they arrived at the Marriott Hotel. It was said that it was one of the best hotels in Los Angeles and that each guest would spend more than $500 there. When Gerald was still working at the construction site, he thought that one day he could bring Irene and her family here for a meal, so Irene's family would probably not look down on him. Of course, for the current him, it did not matter. He had seen the world. After parking the car, Gerald and Kira walked down. Kira naturally held his hand. "Come closer." Kiera blushed slightly and said, "Otherwise, no one will believe that we are a couple." Gerald was speechless and had to get closer. Just like that, the two walked towards the hotel hand in hand. Just as they reached the door, a voice rang out. "Ems, Bender." Gerald looked over and frowned slightly. Not far away, three people were walking toward him. He recognized two of them, Irene and Adriel. Gerald didn't expect that Irene and Adriel would attend this banquet. At this time, Irene was dressed in a black evening dress. When she saw Gerald, she was also slightly stunned. She opened her mouth and asked, "Gerald, what are you doing here?" Gerald looked at her and Adriel but didn't speak. Beside Adriel, the gaze of another young man with grey hair darkened. He looked at Gerald and said, "Ems, Bender, who is he?" Kiera smiled faintly. "Let me introduce him. He's my boyfriend, Gerald Kenneth." As Kiera spoke, she smiled and looked toward Adriel. "Adriel, you know him. This is Matthew Geiger, the second young heir of the Geiger Group." As soon as Kiera finished speaking, the three people in front of her were all dumbfounded. Adriel sized up Gerald and said, "Ems, Bender, your taste is a bit unique. My friend has been chasing you for 2 years, but you are still unwilling to accept him. You actually found such a man to be your boyfriend, and he's just divorced." "That's right, Gerald is working on a construction site." "Ems, Bender, you are so beautiful and capable. You can't fall in love with such a poor man, right?" Irene said. Kiera smiled and said, "I think Gerald is pretty good." "I don't believe it. Kiera, you must be trying to make me give up." Adriel looked at Gerald with disdain, and then he said, "You hired him to be your boyfriend, right? If you want to perform a show, you should get prepared. This guy looks so shabby. When he enters the banquet, he will embarrass you." Matthew looked at Gerald as he said, "Bastard, stay away from Kiera." Kiera's expression changed slightly as if her trick had been exposed. She subconsciously tightened her grip on Gerald's arm. Gerald raised his head and looked at Adriel and the others. He wrapped his arm around Kiera's waist and said, "Let's go in." Kiera was slightly dumbfounded. Then, she nodded. The two of them turned around and walked into the hotel. "Son of a bitch." Matthew's face flickered with anger. "Don't worry," Adriel said with a smile, "this guy is just a bumpkin. It's impossible for a girl like Kiera to fancy him." "You seem to know him very well," Matthew asked in surprise. "He is my ex-husband, a worker who carried bricks on the construction site, a pure loser." Irene looked at Gerald's back and revealed a disgusted expression. At the same time, she somehow felt displeased. Gerald had followed all her words for 3 years. At this time, she felt very unhappy, as if her toy was snatched away by someone. Irene was also displeased with the way Gerald looked at her just now. "He's the loser you were talking about just now." Adriel was surprised. Immediately after, a cold smile appeared on his face. "Then I'll make him lose all his face at the banquet later." It was called a banquet, but it was actually a party. As the representative of New Bank, Kiera had great connections. The moment she stepped into the banquet hall, she became the focus of the crowd. Many people came up to greet her, and she would also politely smile back. And these people, most of them would look at Gerald curiously, with strange expressions on their faces. There were not many people in the banquet hall, about 34 people, and among them, almost all the top rich young men in Los Angeles gathered together. The banquet hall was filled with all kinds of first-class food. Gerald looked at the food and coughed. "It should be fine if I take something to eat, right?" Kiera was dumbfounded for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Of course. All right." Gerald nodded. He picked up a plate and picked up some food. He walked to a seat with Kiera and sat down. Then, he started to eat. They looked a little out of place with the banquet hall. Most of the people in the banquet hall were in 2s and 3s, holding red wine glasses and talking. Only Gerald was eating alone. Kiera didn't feel embarrassed. She took a drink and sat next to Gerald. At this time, Adriel brought Irene and Matthew into the banquet hall. They saw Gerald sitting there eating from a distance. Matthew curled his lips and said, "He really is a bumpkin. The gathering is for everyone to chat together and see if there is a chance to cooperate and expand their connections. But he actually eats there. He has never seen the world at all." Irene said in disgust. It's probably the first time he came to Marriott Hotel. He hasn't eaten anything here in his life. So he wants to try it. Humph, today I will let him know what it is like to be awkward, Matthew said and sneered. He walked to the side to get a glass of red wine and walked straight to Gerald and Kiera. When Matthew came to Gerald and saw Gerald eating with his head lowered, a trace of disdain appeared on the corners of his mouth. Then, Matthew opened his mouth and said in a very loud voice, "Ems. Bender, is this gentleman beside you your boyfriend?" When they were at the door, Kiera had already said that. But Matthew had brought it up again. Moreover, his voice was so loud that it was obvious that he wanted to attract everyone's attention. Sure enough, as his voice fell, many people in the banquet hall cast their gazes over. Gerald raised his head and looked at Matthew calmly. Kiera smiled and said, "Well, I can also introduce him to everyone. The one next to me is my boyfriend, Gerald." Matthew had a sinister smile on his face as he said, I didn't expect that the goddess in many of our hearts, the great beauty, Kiera of New Bank, was actually taken down by this man. I guess many boys will be sad. However, looking at his attire, it is a bit adds by pub future, out of place with this banquet." Kiera frowned slightly. She looked at Gerald and found that Gerald's face was quite calm. In fact, Kiera was also very curious about Gerald. The first time she saw Gerald, Gerald looked no different from a beggar, but he actually had a diamond card from New Bank, which couldn't be owned by anyone with a fortune. Kiera looked at Gerald's calm face and thought of Gerald's previous clothes and actions. She guessed in her heart that Gerald was relatively low-key and did not like to expose his real identity. She smiled and said, "He is just an ordinary person." Matthew laughed and said, "This is too ordinary. By the way, Ems. Bender, you are not asking us pursuers to give up and deliberately hire him to pretend to be your boyfriend on the internet, right? This is a banquet hosted by Mr. Herman. Not everyone can come here casually. Hey, I am talking about you, boy." Seeing that Gerald had not spoken, Matthew looked at Gerald and said, "As far as I know, you seem to be working at the construction site. Acting to be a fake boyfriend is your part-time job. How much can someone like you earn by pretending to be someone else's boyfriend?" PFFT. At this time, many people in the banquet hall burst into laughter. Matthew looked at Gerald with a half smile and asked cheerfully, "Don't be silent, man. Say something." Gerald picked up the plate on the table and stood up. He ignored Matthew, looked at Kiera, and said, "Darling, there seems to be a dog barking here. It's not quiet to eat anything. Let's change to another place." As soon as Gerald finished speaking, everyone was quiet. Matthew's face suddenly turned dark. His eyes suddenly turned cold. He looked at Gerald and said, "Bastard, who the fuck are you referring to? An idiot carrying bricks and acting tough with me." Bang! At this time, the door of the banquet hall was pushed open. A girl supported an old man in his 60s and walked into the banquet hall. The moment the two appeared, everyone looked over. "So beautiful." Many girls cried out in surprise. Yes, the girl at the door was very beautiful. She had a height of nearly 5.6 feet, a perfect figure, and an angelic face. When she showed up in the banquet hall, she almost instantly became the focus of everyone. Gerald couldn't help but be slightly surprised. This girl, in terms of appearance and temperament, was almost equal to Valerie. The old man is the richest man in Los Angeles, Bradley Herman. The girl is his daughter, Audrey. Kiera explained to Gerald. "Is it actually him?" Gerald secretly sighed. He actually knew Bradley. Kiera looked at Gerald in surprise and asked, "Do you know him?" "I have some impressions of him." Gerald smiled and said, "Not very familiar. It's quite lively. Just now, I seemed to hear something unpleasant at the entrance of the banquet hall." Bradley revealed a kind smile. His eyes slowly swept over the young people at the banquet hall. However, the moment his gaze swept over Gerald, he was suddenly shocked. His gaze quickly swept over. Then, his body trembled slightly. Then, under the surprised eyes of everyone, Bradley walked quickly toward Gerald. 23. Bradley walked all the way to Gerald, and in front of everyone's shocked eyes. Suddenly, The richest man in Los Angeles, the most powerful figure in Los Angeles, actually bowed to Gerald. It was you. We met once. After you saved me, you disappeared. I wanted to repay you, but I didn't have the chance. I didn't expect you to appear at my banquet. I heard 3 years ago that you were in Los Angeles. Bradley's voice trembled. But before Bradley could finish his words, Gerald interrupted him and said, "You have recognized the wrong person." Night Watch was a secret organization in America. Ordinary people did not know its existence. However, when one was powerful enough, he would hear about it. As for Bradley, he had once met Gerald. Gerald had once saved Bradley from the killers of Blood Lotus. At that time, Bradley heard about Blood Lotus Night Watch. Later, he signed a confidentiality agreement and was not allowed to mention these things to anyone. Gerald was worried that Bradley would be so excited that he continued to speak and accidentally revealed these things. Being able to be the richest man in Los Angeles, Bradley was obviously very experienced and watchful. He knew that Gerald did not want to be exposed. Bradley's body trembled and wiped the tears from his face. Then he stood straight and said, I'm old and my eyes are blurry. I actually recognized the wrong person. Audrey hurriedly helped him. Her beautiful eyes swept over Gerald, a trace of curiosity in them. At this time, Matthew finally let out a sigh of relief. Just now, when Bradley bowed, he almost peed in his pants. Matthew would never afford to provoke a person who could make the richest man in Los Angeles bow to him. At this time, hearing Bradley say that he recognized the wrong person, Matthew said, "Yes, Mr. Herman, this guy is probably a boyfriend hired by Ms. Bender. He is just a worker who moved bricks at the construction site and came here to eat and drink. You must have recognized the wrong person. He is a loser." Bradley wiped his tears, then turned around. He pointed to Matthew, then pointed to the door, and said in an unquestionable tone, "You get out." Matthew was stunned. I heard that you were making a fuss when I was outside. Since this friend was brought here by Ms. Bender, he is my guest. I am hosting this banquet for the younger generation to communicate. I don't want you to come here to find trouble and humiliate anyone. So, get out of here. Bradley said coldly. Well, Matthew's face turned red, and he couldn't be more awkward. He was actually going to be chased away in front of everyone at such a gathering. This was truly shameful. I told you to get out. Don't you hear me? Bradley's tone became even colder. Matthew left the banquet hall. When he left, his face and neck were so red. He did not dare to disobey Bradley. If he continued to stay here shamelessly, it would only make him more embarrassed. When he left, Bradley smiled and said happily, "Let's continue, everyone. I'm gonna go first as I will not disturb your young people. To enjoy yourselves. I will come back and announce something later." As he spoke, he looked at Gerald, who had sat down not far away and continued to eat. Then he walked out. Audrey also stayed. When he left, the banquet hall returned to liveliness. Audrey was instantly surrounded by a few young people. Everyone began to talk about their own matters. Of course, they would also talk about Matthew and Gerald. They seemed to have regained poise. Of course, there were two exceptions. Irene frowned slightly. She had been watching from the side. She wanted to see Gerald make a fool of himself. From beginning to end, Matthew was constantly exposing Gerald's shortcomings, but Gerald's expression had always been very calm. In the past, whenever they humiliated Gerald, Gerald would always show a sullen or aggrieved look. Something is wrong. Looking at Gerald, who was sitting not far away, she felt a bit uncomfortable. What's wrong? Adriel looked at Irene and asked. Nothing. Irene shook her head. Adriel chuckled and said, I've brought you to such a high-end place already. Just sleep with me tonight. Alas, Irene said coquettishly. I'll take a few more photos and post them on my timeline. I guess my friends will be so envious. Thank you, darling. As for anything else, let's talk about it later. The other one who was still a little strange was Kiera. She was still sitting next to Gerald. Looking at Gerald, who was eating the third portion of food, Kiera became more and more curious. He's really mysterious. The corners of her mouth curled into a smile. How long will this banquet last? It's too boring. I'm full, Gerald said. When Mr. Herman comes to announce something, it should be over. Kiera leaned against the sofa and smiled sweetly. Alas, this is the most relaxing banquet for me. Speaking of it, if there is such a dinner party next time, I'll have to ask you for help. Gerald nodded. No problem. There is good food and drinks. It's worth it. As they talked, the door of the banquet hall was pushed open again. Bradley walked into the banquet hall, and there was a microphone in his hand. Everyone, he said, everyone here is a genius of Los Angeles' younger generation. This time, I have gathered you together. Other than providing everyone a chance to communicate, I have another matter to announce. Everyone looked at him. He smiled slightly and his gaze landed on Audrey, who was not far away. That is my daughter Audrey's marriage. What? Everyone was stunned. My daughter is already 25 years old and has always been single. As a father, I am anxious. Therefore, there is another thing. I hope that everyone will chase after my daughter boldly if you like her. I will definitely not interfere. Bradley had not finished speaking yet. A petite figure instantly passed through the crowd and snatched the microphone over. Dad, don't talk nonsense. She's shy. Shy, Bradley said happily. What I said just now definitely counts. Audrey's face suddenly turned red. Not far away, Gerald was shocked and thought, you're her father. What are you doing? Hee. Kiera covered her mouth and chuckled. Mr. Herman is very humorous. However, when he is really fierce, everyone is afraid of him, especially when it comes to business. He is decisive and ruthless. This is also why Matthew was afraid of him just now. Gerald smiled. After this farce, the party was close to the end. Gradually, people began to leave. After half of the people left, Kiera also stood up and said, let's go too. When they arrived at the door, Kiera greeted Bradley. Bradley looked at Gerald and then pursed his lips without saying anything. The two of them left the banquet hall smoothly and arrived at the entrance of the hotel. Kiera said with a smile, where are you going? I'll drive you there. You can leave first. I still have some things to do. I can just take a taxi, Gerald said. Kiera did not ask more. She nodded and said, okay, thank you for today. If you need anything, just call me. Gerald nodded. When Kiera left, Gerald arrived at the entrance of the hotel and planned to take a taxi to leave. At this time, a middle-aged man quickly caught up and said, Mr. Kenneth. The man was a middle-aged man in a suit. He introduced himself and said, I am the secretary of Mr. Herman. This is the business card of Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman asked me to remind you that no matter what, you must call him. Gerald calmly took the business card, nodded, and said, okay, I got it. Then he stopped a taxi and got into the car. He did not go straight back to Cherry Garden but rushed to Trevor's house. Some of his things were still at Trevor's house. The most important thing was naturally that iron box. 3 years ago, for this iron box, 3 watchmen in the top 10 of Night Watch almost died, including him, who was once watchman no. 0. Ads by Pub Future. As for what was inside the iron box, he did not know. He had only taken the mission, and no one told him what it was. Half an hour later, at 9 o'clock in the evening, Gerald successfully arrived at Trevor's house. Standing at the door, Gerald found that the door was open. On the stairwell, Trevor's voice was heard. Hello, Damery, are you still short of people? Okay, sorry to bother you. If you are short of people, call me. Well, I am available now and have no work to do. Trevor made a phone call. Obviously, he was on the phone looking for a job. The reason why he chose to go outside was probably that he did not want his son, Liam, to hear it. Gerald walked up and found that there was a flow full of cigarette ends in the corridor. Trevor was a genuine farmer. He did not have a change in status like Gerald. Losing the job was equivalent to losing his livelihood. He did not even have as much strength as Gerald. For the sake of Liam's chemotherapy fees, he did his best. Seeing Gerald, Trevor threw away the cigarette in his hand and said after stepping on it, I thought you would not come back today. Damn. I called several construction sites and asked them. They are all not short of people. If I can't find a job again, chemotherapy fees for next month. Gerald smiled and said, I have a job. Do you want to try it with me tomorrow? Huh. Trevor's eyes lit up. Which construction site? It's not. It's Glory World, Gerald said. That logistics company. Trevor's expression changed slightly as he said. But I have to run around if I have the job. If I leave, no one will take care of Liam. You don't have to go on business, Gerald said. Hard work. Things like unloading goods. How much are the wages? Trevor hurriedly asked. It's not that. We will meet at the company's entrance at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. As for the wages, if you are not satisfied. Poraltra Limited, independent marketing agency. You can just go, Gerald smiled and said. Trevor hesitated for a moment, nodded, and said, it's fine. Anyway, I can't find a job for the time being. It's good to go and try. My luck. But then again, how do you know people from the company? It's a coincidence, Gerald said with a smile. He knew that if he told the truth, Trevor would definitely not believe it. Trevor did not ask too much. With the news from Gerald, his mood seemed to be much better. He tilted his head and looked at Gerald. You'll still stay here tonight? No, I found a place to stay. I came to get my things, Gerald said with a smile. Okay, then let's go in and get it. Be quiet later. Liam is still doing his homework. Don't disturb him, Trevor said. Gerald nodded. After taking the things, Gerald returned to the residence of Valerie and Macy in Cherry Garden. When he went back, two of them were not there. It was obvious that they had gone out. Watchmen naturally had to protect the peace of the night. At 8 o'clock the next morning, Gerald went out early. At 8:30, he arrived at the entrance of Glory World. When he arrived at the door, a black car stopped just in time. Tyrone walked out of it. When he saw Gerald, he waved his hand and said, Hi, Mr. Kenneth. You're so early. I came here today because I had something to do. I don't usually come. I am quite relieved to leave the company to you two manage, Gerald said. Let's go up together. I have something to tell you. Naturally, he was talking about the matter of letting Trevor work here. After saying that, Tyrone nodded and said, Don't worry. I will arrange it. What about the salary? $160,000 a year. Gerald said calmly. No matter what position, give him this price. Of course, let him keep it a secret. Tyrone nodded. He thought for a moment and then said, By the way, I'm afraid you have to take a photo today and put it on the wall of the company so that the employees will know that you are the president here. Otherwise, it will be awkward if you can't enter the company next time you come. Gerald smiled and said, Okay. Then Tyrone asked someone to take a photo of Gerald. At 9 o'clock, Gerald's mobile phone rang. It was Trevor calling. He picked it up, said a few words, and ran downstairs. At the door, Trevor was standing there, looking inside nervously. The security guard was the new one. He also saw Tyrone personally bring Gerald in and did not stop Gerald. Come in. When they reached the door, Gerald waved at Trevor. Gerald. At this time, a beautiful woman ran over from the door. She swiped her card at the door and looked at Gerald with disdain. The person who came was Vivian. What are you doing here? Haven't you been fired? As she spoke, she glared at him again. The person who fired me was fired. I was called back again, Gerald said with a smile. Humph, how can you be so proud of being a security guard? Can you earn $800 a month? A good-for-nothing, Vivian scolded. In the security room, the security guard at the door wanted to curse. Did you see my cousin's timeline yesterday? Adriel took him to the party of the top rich people in Los Angeles in the Marriott Hotel. You can't even afford to go to enjoy the food once a month with your salary. Vivian looked at Gerald with disdain and said. Of course, she probably unfriended you a long time ago. You definitely don't know. Gerald looked at her and felt a little funny. Hurry up and get out of the way. I'm so unlucky to see you. The day before yesterday, I bumped into you, and my car broke down. Yesterday, my leader was fired when I met you. I couldn't even sleep for longer in the morning because of you now. You're a jinx. You deserve to be abandoned by my cousin. Seeing her current life, even I'm envious. Vivian said. She pushed Gerald away and walked into the building. Looking at her back, Gerald chuckled in his heart and thought, you must be quite unlucky today, especially when you see my photo and my position there.